So, since Shadowlands was announced, everyone was okay with the story progression, but just please don't let Sylvanas be a good guy all along, as if she hasn't been doing bad stuff for like a decade. Well, with some new information and a bit more knowledge of who the jailer is, isn't completely out of the question that Sylvanas could be redeemed, to an extent at least. However, should the Banshee Queen redemption arc even happen in the first place? I'd like to thank Ridgevault for sponsoring this video. They've sent it to me about a month ago. I've used it. It is great. You can fit 12 cards on the side. You can fit cash here as well. And it is so much better in terms of space when compared to this old wallet that I've had. There are over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. There is a lifetime warranty and a test drive for 45 days, meaning if you don't love it, you can send it back. If you go to ridge.com/Doron, you can get 10% off as well as free worldwide shipping. Check out the link in the description below. So, right at the start, Sylvanas is no doubt a tragic character. She was never really evil. In fact, she was quite virtuous. Sylvanas was one of the highest ranked and most important high elves, a ranger, general of Silver Moon, a soldier that was ready and that did go until the very end to defend her people. She faced off Arthas despite the odds and gave it her all, but ultimately Arthas did not provide her with a clean death, but instead tortured her spirit to the extreme. The Death Knight essentially condemned her to undeath and guaranteed that her spirit will never rest even after all the half-living torture is over. This is best shown by Sylvanas' own quotes such as, "What are we if not slaves to this torment?" or "What joy is there in this curse?" So yeah, it is pretty obvious that she saw this existence as completely miserable, which is exactly what it was. Fast forward to Wrath of the Lich King. We're at the top of the Icecrown Citadel, Arthas is defeated, Sylvanas finally got her revenge, and she just decided to end the suffering and to finally seek peace after all these years of pain and just constant torment. Unfortunately, she ends up in the Maw, a place of no hope and even more torment, a void, and she realizes that damn, even after my death, my misery will only get worse, and now it will last forever, and I will never be able to escape it. So, in that moment, the jailer offers her a pact, and I'm guessing pretty much the only way out. He tells her to help him to gather more power, to get rid of Bolvar, the guy that is blocking his path, and somehow this will help him break free, and it will help him in breaking the machine of death. Now, at this point, we don't know exactly how this works, but presumably it does, and it will help Sylvanas, and I'm guessing all undead, from a guaranteed eternity of torture. She even says this in the story trailer of how the jailer will help us get our fuel back so that we can finally choose our own destiny. What the process of this will be, we can only speculate at this point, as the information that we do have is extremely limited, but this definitely gives a lot more context to Sylvanas and justifies a lot of her actions. Now, let's not get crazy here. Sylvanas committed terrible atrocities. She essentially had a concentration camp, used plague, burned down an entire city full of civilians alive. So yeah, she definitely wasn't a good guy, and this can't be justified in any way. However, from her perspective at least, this was in all actuality the only way for her and the undead to go forward. Sure, she could not do all of this and just be a good person, but then she would end up for eternity in constant agony despite being cursed every single day of her miserable existence. Now, I believe that Shadowlands really changes all the lore structurally directly from the core. The afterlife turned out to not be a place of rest, but literally another existence for all eternity. So when you compare the two, it really minimizes the importance of a mortal life. Literally, who cares what happens in the 50 to a few hundred years on Azeroth, because when you die, you will live for an eternity within the Shadowlands. Now, I'm guessing Sylvanas used this to justify herself, because essentially the mortal life doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things, and her ultimate goal is to completely change the afterlife, to change it from the core to what we can't really say at this point. We've learned that the way Shadowlands is set up, they're pretty much just one big, massive mechanism and a way to keep the jailer chained, so it doesn't really even seem like that nice of a place to go to, but more as a place to just become another cog in this gigantic machinery. I'm guessing once the jailer is free, this entire mechanism will completely malfunction, as it is almost destroyed even before we go there, and then something different will happen to the Shadowlands, presumably. So ultimately, I do believe that Sylvanas could be completely redeemed. Two arguments for this. First one is the one I mentioned of how ultimately the afterlife matters more than anything, and that was her ultimate goal to change it. And the second is how she never really had free will, or lost it completely as she fell defending Qualtalas. First off, she became a servant of the Lich King, who was in turn a servant of the jailer, freed herself for a few years and was once again bound to the jailer with this pact, now without a middleman. But even when she was free, Sylvanas was essentially bound to the jailer anyway and her undead fate. So yes, they are theoretically 100% within the right to make her not that bad of a villain, but I really wouldn't want that to happen. Despite the lore making sense, I wouldn't want to see Sylvanas turning out to be a good person all along and working for some greater goal. If anything, just for not being a completely cheesy story with a single overused character for like 4 expansions. Even if they do decide to redeem her, I think that should at least be a sacrifice. I don't want her to save the afterlife and after that to become some sort of a deity or a new faction leader that will help us in the future. I think in the best case scenario for this, Sylvanas should just sacrifice herself to save a soul and to make up for her sins. That would be cheesy, but at least it would be a bit less cheesy. Ideally, however, I'd rather want her to just continue being a villain and that we defeat her. I mean, realistically, Garrosh, despite the mana bomb and the civil war and everything else, was a lot less evil than Sylvanas in the grand scheme of things, and they did essentially just sacrifice him in Warlords of Draenor pretty early without any redemption arc, or at least a redemption arc before he reached the Shadowlands. Ultimately though, we'll have to wait and see what will happen to Sylvanas, as now she's very closely tied to the jailer and his goal, so what happens to the jailer will pull Sylvanas' storyline in the same direction. Thank you for watching. Check out why Shadowlands is actually a prison by clicking on the screen, and also check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.